Welcome back to Fitness or Fiction. Today we have three fancy little topics to discuss. We are going to go after A, why does my program need to change? B, should I train every day or work out every day? Very interesting conversation on that one. And C, or should I say 3 just to mess it up?
A, B, 3,
A, B,
nighttime
and
snacks.
3, snacking at night. Tasty.
A1, does my program need to change? And also how to roughly differentiate what the changes are and why they matter. Wrap your head around it.
So this is a foundational discussion. We've talked about this in passing a few times in other topics, but this comes from the conversation that you had with your client, which I've had with my clients over and over again, which is, well, but I thought we did like 3 of 10. Why is this different? Right? So the question is, why does my program need to change? Where do you start on this one with your people?
So I'm not going to say names, but I had a client, we just changed his program. He was in kind of like a standard hypertrophy-based program, and then I swapped the program. I put him into still standard hypertrophy, but we added some supersets, and we did a complete exercise revamp, changed the stimulus of all the exercises. But the variables roughly stayed the same, and I knocked down some things from 4 sets to 3 sets due to time constraints, and just from our communication, I thought that we wouldn't have time if I did too much volume on sets overall. So those are the tweaks I made to the program, and he asked what changes, like why do we decide these changes, and why is there less, and why does it matter? So I tried to explain to him. For me, like I was trying to talk about the principles of hypertrophy, and like those standard principles would be, your standard sets, reps, rest, and then you go into the tangibles that you can't really figure out. But like tempo is one that's not often, I think, included in your standard gym program. If you go to bodybuilding.com, there's not always a tempo. And if there is, it's probably not followed very well.
That's right. So tempo, intensity.
Intensity is a 5th one, and that one's hard to gauge as well because that's variable day to day. And then full range of motion and quality of movement. That's like the 7 I got. Is there anything I'm missing?
Well, we can get really deep into it, but this isn't a really deep conversation on this. This is starting it out.
So that's the standard 7 that you need to think about.
So the real question, like let's start with the foundation of why does my program need to change? Mm-hmm. Essentially, we're asking the body to change.
Yeah.
There's 3 different ways. If we're asking for hypertrophy, there's 3 different types that we'd look at. We'd look at sarcoplasmic, which is the amount of carbohydrates my cell can hold. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be like, well, my muscle gets bigger because I'm holding more glycogen or fuel. It doesn't matter what it's called. I'm holding more fuel.
Pumpy.
Yeah, there we go. The second one would be sarcomeric or myofibril. And myofibril hypertrophy is actually increasing the amount of mitochondria each muscle cell holds. Mm-hmm. So humans undergo hypertrophy, which is an increase in size of a muscle cell. Cats have hyperplasia, which is why they can jump 5 times their body height. That would be like a human jumping over a giraffe. That would be frightening. It's so scary.
It'd be so good.
Yeah. It's shocking.
And the third type?
Third type, myonuclear domain. So like when you start getting enough extra mitochondria to a cell, your body's like, hey, I need more brains to run this stuff and manage energy. Mm-hmm. And that's when it'll start adding extra nucleus. So these 3 types are important because we're basically looking at, okay, so I need more brains, more mechanics, or more fuel.
Yeah.
So for somebody that just wants to stay in like that sort of pumpy phase where it's like higher repetition, lower loads, but they would go to failure. Go ahead.
I was going to say, honestly, like a lot of the pumpiness I've witnessed from people too, as well, is it's not necessarily, the intensity is not maxed out to failure. You can get a pump without going to complete failure.
For sure, yeah.
So like there's a difference between hitting a pump at 70% effort, and then there's a difference of hitting a pump at 100% effort.
Oh, and there's a different stimulus too. Yeah. One of them, the stimulus is a lack of rest, whereas the other one, the stimulus is actual failure.
Yeah.
So one of them would be more on the line of like oxidative stress, and one of them would be more on the line of like an AMPK or a sarcoplasmic stimulus. But we don't need to get that deep into it. At the end of the day, if you're using lighter weights for more reps, I've seen a lot of people online post, oh yeah, well, I can feel the stimulus because I can really get the contraction. You don't need heavier weights. It's like, well, listen, you can only live in that zone for so long before your body's like, well, listen, I have as much fuel as I can hold in this cell. Mm-hmm. Like without you changing the amount of mechanics to this cell that would then necessitate more fuel being stored, I basically have all the siding sitting outside of your home, and I just need the builders to come and put it on the walls.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, getting more siding doesn't make the job any better. So that's kind of the basis of why things need to change. You can potentiate future results by being like, yeah, okay, so instead of fuel, I'm going to focus on the mechanics of I want more mitochondria to be in this muscle cell. So when you do that, you would likely be switching to something that's going to be more tension-based, so higher intensity, and we would have longer rests and lower reps. When we do something like that, we're saying, okay, so we're actually getting more workers to this scenario now. So if you're in that phase for a while and then you start doing extensification where you're doing more repetitions, then it's like, hey, we have all this extra tissue that's here now. So now send more fuel. You'll be able to hold more fuel.
Yeah.
So you're potentiating future results.
Yeah.
When we go really deep into failure, we start getting the changes of myonuclear domain, which is more nuclei. And that means that our body's going to be better at managing fuel in and out, meaning potentiating future results in both realms.
Yeah.
So fuel storage. So you get more workers and you get more materials just by having, say, better supply chain management.
So the simple answer is like you need to shock the body so that it gets used to this stimulus. But what you're saying is like if you only train one of those, if you only train increased fuel capacity and not size or brains, mechanics, you're limiting your gains.
Yeah, so if we call myonuclear the supply chain and we call our myofibril the workers, and then we call the last one the materials. If we don't do all three of those things, we can't finish the project as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I think to try to simplify it, those three things come in a different, like a variety of those 7 foundations that I talked about. There's a variety of ways to attack those in order to get it done.
Yeah, and I would say that we're not actually shocking the body at all. We're just working a system that hasn't been the primary focus. So if you look at the way the body works, it's not just like, oh, I'm only working my cardiovascular system. That's it. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, no, there's going to be a balance of all these different things going on. For example, I could say my stimulus that I'm using is mechanical tension. I'm trying to get more mitochondria. That's my change that I want. The way that you choose your tempo, if you make a pause in the lengthened position, you're more likely to overlap mechanical damage. And it's always going to be present, but it's the amount that you're focusing on one thing. So the cascade of your body, it's redundancies. These systems are always running, and it's a balance of what's doing what. Mm-hmm. So it's like, which one am I pushing to the front for the main focus?
Yeah.
And if you're always saying fuel is the answer, your body's going to get really good at that. And it's hard to get really good if you got all the materials sitting there, everything's waiting for you.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I want to build more, so send the workers in.
Yeah.
And focus on that stimulus for a while. So why does my program need to change? The real answer is you've got your supply chain, your workers, and your materials. Mm-hmm. We want to have all three of those things running really well if we want to get really good results. So we don't want to fall into this nature of, well, here's what a good program looks like. It always looks like this.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be individual changes based on training age and all these sorts of things.
And different people respond to different stimulus better than others.
Absolutely.
You put 3 different people on the same program, one person's going to benefit a little bit more than the others.
And that's going to have a lot of factors as well. So, their genetics, there is a matter of genetics.
Mm-hmm. Like your biceps, go on.
So the genetic thing is going to be a piece of the puzzle. How does this person naturally adapt? Mm-hmm. But a big portion of that is going to be training age too. So for me, I adapt really good to low reps because I spent so long training in Olympic lifting. So between 1 and 3 repetitions. So if you put me between 4 and 6, that for me is mechanical tension. Most people, that's going to be like 6 to 8, or even for some people 8 to 10. Mm-hmm. So these individual differences play out, which is important for the coaches to pay attention to and things like this. But there's a lot of factors that go into it. But you find out more if you actually can stick to a program and see what actually happens.
And that's where consistency really plays a role into it. Because if you're only going to be with a coach or a trainer for 3 months at a time, and then you're going to dip for a year and a half, and then you're going to get back into it. And then I used to go to the gym and I did this program, but it got boring, so I stopped it. Now I'm just playing. You'll never actually start to understand how your body actually responds to said stimulus, and you'll never actually be able to completely optimize yourself because you're not entirely sure what works. You might know what feels good, but we already discussed what feels good doesn't necessarily mean it's working.
So this ends up being kind of a self-awareness game when I look at it. People find that they consistently are learning more about themselves as they get older, and that's a process for them, but they don't see their physical body as the same thing, but it's consistently changing, adapting, and developing as you get older, whether that's getting better or getting worse. The process of decline, the process of escalation, all of this stuff is happening. But like the process of self-awareness is going to be tied not only emotionally, but physically throughout a lifespan. So the concept, the pathology, I'll call it, of looking at it like, I know everything I need to know about exercise. It's like, man, I've been doing this for a long time. And it's not that. Even in my own workouts, when I work with my coach, I'm finding out nuances to my own body every week. Like there's little things that I'm finding out that are helpful and interesting that help me discuss things better with people. And so the concept of like, well, I'm done learning about that. It's like, no, you're never done learning and developing. And that includes your mental and your physical being.
Yeah. And then differentiating on these programs as well. The split obviously adds another layer of complexity to it. And then the focus that you want to focus on, like Curtis, I want biceps like you, is going to change the focus as well on how many sets can my biceps actually hold. But that depends on the intensity, and that depends on what else does that depend on? I think that's me. Is that me or you?
Yeah, frequency is a really interesting thing, because the amount of times per week that you're going to apply a stimulus, you could say, okay, I'm gonna get 3 sets to failure on biceps, because you love talking about biceps.
My biceps are small.
Doing 3 sets to failure on one day versus on 3 days is going to be a very different thing.
Or if you try to do it every day.
Totally. Which kind of segues into our next topic.
Should I train my biceps every day? The reason everyone came here for. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen.
Should I train every day? Should I exercise every day? The question of should I exercise every day, the answer I would say is yes.
It depends.
It's just yes. Should you move every day? The answer is yes. Should I targetedly go to the gym and beat myself up every day? The answer is very clearly no in my world.
So I manage my workouts on my own app, my True Coach app. And if I've noticed that my workouts took a dwindle down over past months with new baby and things like that. And it was more challenging, excuses. I've basically given myself a non-negotiable to just start working out every day. That doesn't mean I'm killing myself every day, though. I might kill myself for 2 days, and then day 3 might be a little bit more cardio focused, more mobility focused, or maybe smaller muscle group focused. Like I can do a body scan and be like, these things are available to train right now because these other things are cooked or they're destroyed, right? And I've been able to kind of adjust the flow of my program, but that's not saying that it's possible for everybody to do, but yes, I think everybody should move a little bit every day.
Yeah, see, when I talk about movement, I'm not talking about you need to exercise. I'm talking about like get up and go for a walk. Like on the days where I go skiing with my kids on the weekend, that's my workout for the day. That's okay. If I'm going to go skating with my kids, that counts as movement. Absolutely it does. I've got up, I've moved my body, I've challenged it in a way that it's not used to, but should we be consistently going after ourselves? Like we have to get better every single day. I would actually say that is a pathological view of exercise. Like we need to have this cycle of challenge and recovery. And that's not like day and night. It's not like that. Depending on the challenge you're putting into the system, you're going to need more rest.
Have you ever done a 7-day program of weights and training, 7 days?
Pretty rare. Pretty rare
back in
me.
Like competing days.
Even when I was competing, it would be 6 days. I would get 9 workouts in some weeks, so I'd be on 2 days and stuff like that. But I'd still have a day or 2 where it would just be like focus on recovery. What's
your average right now of weights, like resistance, like beating yourself up in the gym?
4.
And you gauge that. I think there's a conversation of recovery and age and stuff like that. Like would a younger Curtis, like a 20-year-old Curtis, opt in for 5 or 6? But that's also time constraints, no kids, blah, blah, blah.
So I pretty consistently live between 3 and 5.
Mhm.
And that's pretty much how I've done things for a long time. But I'm pretty active outside of that stuff, getting outside. And I've always enjoyed things like sports and skiing and
Swimming.
Yeah, don't forget swamming. But like the idea that we would have to be in the gym grinding every single day, I do think that's relatively pathological, especially for the average person.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't need to be grinding. If we're putting in the work that we need to be, and we don't find that we're getting to the right place, we need to be looking at other issues.
So this also goes hand in hand with topic A1.
Oh, yes.
Yes, indeed. 6 days a week. If you're going to the gym 6 days a week, your intensity is probably going to be a little bit lower, so you can actually keep up with it. And the more sets you do, like a 2-hour workout, if you're doing a 2-hour workout and you're doing like 5 sets here and 5 sets here and you're crushing so many sets, there's diminishing returns with that because you're probably not able to maintain the proper required intensity for a lot of what you're doing. The more you spread yourself out, you start to spread yourself too thin and intensity starts to go down.
So the high quality, significant time under tension, it really is going to change based on your level of fatigue. And that's not just muscular fatigue, that's also neurological. So like when I first started Olympic lifting, my coach gave me, I would have a 5-day week, 2 weeks in a row, and then I'd have a 4-day week, 2 weeks in a row. And the 5-day week would be, okay, you get a big day, medium day, small day, then you rest.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get a big day and small day, and then you rest. That was my 5-day week.
Yeah.
And then my 4-day week would be like, okay, you have a big day, a moderate day, a small day, and you'd have a rest in between. And then your final day would be another big day. So it was always managing fatigue so you could actually recover. And if you're not getting the right amount of recovery, your body is going to put systems of redundancy in to stop further changes because it gets too stressful on the system.
Yeah, I think I speak for everyone in this room. I've had 2-hour workouts, as I'm sure you have as well.
Course,
We've
many.
Probably even played with some of those workouts together where we're just like, let's just have fun and just go into the ground.
In Santa Monica, we would work out like 6 hours a day. We'd have a 2-hour workout at Waxman's. We'd head to Santa Monica Pier and go on
those are good days.
On the rings. We'd run around taking videos. Yeah.
But to that point, what I was going to say is we've had 2-hour workouts together where we're just going for 2 hours hard. We've also had, say, 30-minute workouts together, which I would say could sometimes be classified as harder than the 2-hour workout because the 30 minutes we get after it much more seriously, less play time, less downtime, maybe just higher intensity because we know time's a ticking and we got to be done in 30, so we just go harder. So more time is not necessarily better.
No, and shorter time is not necessarily better either, right?
Yeah.
It's one of these games where we should, it comes back to topic A1, we should be cycling where we're at and making sure that we're in a good place. And in a good place means okay, so how are my joints feeling? How am I feeling energy-wise? How's my affect? Am I feeling happy and positive today? Or am I feeling beaten down and having a hard time seeing the positive in life?
Yeah.
Checking in on your body and making sure that you're actually doing things to move you in a positive direction is very different than grinding towards a goal at all costs, because I would actually say we can do this on its own topic, but if you were to take all of the tenets of an abusive relationship and just take out the abusive relationship part and be like, have you seen this in the gym? Have you felt this with your own workouts? You would start seeing oh man, a lot of these pathological ways and control mechanisms are something that we deal with when we look at our own physical journey.
It's interesting, yeah. So topic A1 and B1, I would summarize as B2. I would summarize as they're relatively complex topics. In order to truly optimize it, it cannot be optimized in a 3-month period or even a year period. To truly optimize what works best for that person. There's ways to go about it, but again, everybody's a little bit different. Everyone's time constraints are different. Mental toughness is different. There's so many differentiating factors in a person that when you're working with your coach, they're just trying to they're trying to design it and make it work for you, for what your time commitments are, for what your gym age is, your experience, your
present
injuries,
reality, we could call it.
your time, everything. There's so many variables in it that it cannot be just a one size fits all.
Well, like my workouts before I had my first kid would be different after I had my first kid. My workouts after I had my second kid would be different than my workouts now.
Yeah.
Like as you add things to your time constraints and you add things to your stress levels and you add things all over the place as far as your age and what you might be dealing with physically, it's gonna be in flux. And that's why if you were to find consistency with your fitness, it would be consistency in the form of somebody to discuss what the best solution right now is.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm trying to summarize this. Like, what's the best solution right now? So if you built a program, or if I built a program, a 1 year long program that was like flawless, everything made sense in it, but you can't adhere to the time, or you can't adhere to the intensity, or you're stressed, or you're dehydrated, or you're just missing workouts, then that perfect program essentially breaks down into a garbage program because it cannot be adhered to properly. So none of this is a one size fits all. It needs to be custom. In my opinion, needs to be custom tailored towards you, where you're at in the present.
Yeah, I think it's my commitment towards coaching has always been that I continue to hire coaches myself. And people look at me like I'm crazy for that, but I actually really do believe in coaching, and I put my money where my mouth is on that consistently, because with what I have going on versus like my career stuff and my family stuff and my own physical goals and all these things, when I have somebody to talk that through and find awareness of what's best for me right now that actually gives a crap, I find that makes things best, versus if I did my own programming, am I going to choose the things that are best for myself, or am I going to choose the things that are most comfortable for myself? Right? So I really do believe in coaching, and I think that whether or not you are a coach, you should have a coach.
Yeah.
And the higher level you get to and the more things that you have on the go, the more it gets important, I think.
Yeah. Just for that, to make sure everything's in line for you.
Yeah.
C3?
That's right. C3. Night snacking.
Bedtime snacks.
So this comes from, I have so many people that I ask them, okay, so how'd this week go? And I have a few people that are weight loss clients. And when I ask them, how are things going? I know that I'm putting in the work that they need to get done physically. So really, at the end of the day, what does it come back to? Are they recovering, and are they eating how they need to? And oftentimes what we run into is like, hey, did you stick to your diet? And it's like, well, pretty good. It's like, cool. So when we went off the rails with the diet, where was that? Because for me, off the rails is like, you should be planning in to have treats. That you should.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that you're avoiding treats and calling it garbage food. I think that's a problem. But where I inevitably find that people struggle is, okay, if you're eating in the evening, what are you eating?
It's like kind of after dinner.
Yeah.
After 8 p.m., what's happening?
Yeah, and there's this consistency. If you were to ask a bunch of people, whether they're nutrition coaches or on the exercise side of things, if you said, what's the biggest thing that your people struggle with, it would be like, yeah, man, 7 p.m. on, or even 8 p.m. on. So there's some interesting research on this and people's positive affect with night snacking versus mornings, and people that cut off food at a certain time and things like that. But what we know for sure, without getting really, really deep into the literature side of things, what we know for sure is that people tend to have less self-control as the day goes on, because it's kind of a muscle that the more that you use,
fatigue,
the less you have left.
Yeah.
So if we know that that's the case, is it a good thing to snack at night? That would be the question I posed to you. Is it a good thing to snack at night?
I don't think it's a terrible thing if done properly. For me, that just means portion control.
Okay.
For me, for instance, I do snack relatively almost every night. And that snack normally involves a small portion of chips or a small portion of candy or chocolate. I play games at night. That's how I wind down and relax. Diane, if we go out and buy a bag of candy, we've done this before, where we buy a bag of candy, that candy bag will last me a week to 2 weeks because I portion it enough. Like, I'll only take a certain amount out of the bag at nighttime when I'm playing games. I was in a rush one time when I had to meet up with some friends to play a game, and I just grabbed the whole bag and ran upstairs with the whole bag. It was one of the few times in the last 10 years where I crushed that whole bag of candy because it was just in front of me and it was accessible and I didn't even think about it. I was playing the game and it was accessible. It was right in front of me and the whole bag just disappeared. I came back downstairs and Diane was like, "Did you eat that whole bag? Oh my God, like you don't do that. You never do that." And I was like, "Yeah, like that was weird." And it's normally because when I come home from grocery shopping, typically the first thing I do is portion that stuff out. And my wife Diane, I'll portion her roughly like the same amount of like candy or chocolate. If we buy like a chocolate bar and we portion the chocolate bar out, there's a difference in approach, like I was telling you off pod, whereas she eats it much faster than I do. Like if me and her went out and bought ice cream and we both have a scoop of ice cream, hers is gone in like 2 seconds flat, and mine might last me like 10 minutes. You know me, I'm a slow eater.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a difference in approach there. But for her, once she eats it quickly, she's not going for more. She knows that like that was her portion. She's kind of developed that relationship with it, that she knows that she's going to enjoy it, but she's done after that. She's not going for seconds and thirds. So that's my relationship with nighttime snacking.
See, for me, I'm not against it either. I really enjoy my nighttime snack. One of my favorite parts of the day is when I get time. It's just me and Sarah. We sit down where we kind of play Jeopardy against each other at night and keep score and like talk trash and stuff. It's pretty funny. But I really enjoy like my last hour of the day with Sarah, and usually I'll grab like a nice beverage and I'll grab maybe like a bowl of popcorn or a snack that I like, and that usually involves sugar. But that's a time that I get to connect with my wife that I really look forward to.
Yeah.
So to vilify nighttime snacking in general is a tough thing. I can't do that at all because I think it's a great thing. But like you, I look at it as like, well, how do I make this something that's positive as opposed to something that I feel bitter about? I think that it's only a problem when you look at it as like, this is stopping me from my goals and it makes me feel bad.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so how do we change that? I don't think the answer, most cases, I don't think the answer is removing nighttime snacking. Sometimes people need to eat more during the day so they're not so darn ravenously hungry at night, and that's a different problem.
Yeah.
I actually don't think snacking at night is a problem if you plan it into what you're going to eat for the day in totality. And I don't track my food. Like I have an idea of what I'm eating, and I try to get a right amount of protein that I know works for me, which is way more than most people eat. But I plan in to have my snack at night. And if I don't have it, it's not like I go to bed ravenously hungry because I've eaten enough.
Yeah.
But it's something that it enhances the time that I have with my wife. It's something I look forward to. And I actually very much enjoy asking her what she'd like and going and grabbing her the portion of whatever she'd like. It's connection time for us. I really like it. So I think that this can become a problematic thing, of course, if it's, well, I haven't eaten enough during the day and I'm not getting to my goals because I'm eating so much at night or things like that. I'm not saying that it's all good. I'm not saying that necessarily, but I'm saying that it's definitely not bad on its own. And it is vilified a lot of times. So for me, snacking at night, it's one of those things that, should you plan for it? Yeah. And I think the way that you do it with portion control is a really good idea. For me, if I'm going to have popcorn, I just grab a little bowl and I take it upstairs because I'm going to be too lazy to go back down and get another bowl anyways. Yeah. But if I do want a second bowl, I'm not going to beat myself up over it. Yeah. But I'm also not doing that every darn night. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, so, and that's the thing is like, so there's other strategies around that this one of the strategies is if you do really like having that whole bag of candy, if that's what makes you feel fulfilled and satisfied, well, then maybe you don't get that full bag every single night. Maybe you get that full bag twice a week. And then on the other nights, you opt in for a healthier snack.
Yeah. Well, and the idea of a treat really feels like a treat when it's not all the time. Like if I really, like before I dropped gluten and dairy, one of my favorite things in the world was a lemon Danish. Yeah. Like one of my favorite things. And I'd look forward to when we would go and buy some lemon Danishes or whatever. I'd sit down and eat one or two and just love it, right? But part of what made that so cool is that it was a treat. I would get that like maybe once or twice a month because the bakery doesn't always have them. Yeah. So it wasn't even like my choice. It was like, the bakery doesn't have any lemon Danishes, whatever. But when it would be like, oh, they haven't had any for a long time, or maybe it just wasn't lining up when I was there. When it would be like a whole month since I've had a lemon Danish that I was really looking forward to, when you get that treat, it would be more impactful. So
it's better, yeah.
Yeah, I think part of making the experience is making sure that it is still a unique and novel experience, not an everyday sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, nighttime snacking, not the worst. I don't think it's the worst. I think it can become a problem, but many things can become a problem.
Yeah.
So if that's something that you like doing, I say let her buck. Just plan out how to make it so that it's something that's adding into your experience and also your goals of where you're trying to get to.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's A1, B2, C3 in the books.
I love the old A, B, and 3. That's so good.
Cool. Well, I don't think I've got anything else to add. Do you?
No, if you're still here, thanks for being here. Feel free to toss us a like, a review, or a follow. We're always happy to have any questions or comments. A lot of what we talk about is things that we're dealing with our clientele and questions that were being asked by people that follow the podcast. So
yeah, in person.
Yeah.
I think our goal or our strategy right now is to approach this like 3 topics at a time, something more directly gym, exercise, physical related, mindset, and then nutrition. So if anyone has anything that they want to discuss on that, definitely hit us up. But for now, that's Eric and Curtis's Bicep signing off. Thanks for joining us this week. We appreciate your support.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you would subscribe, follow, and throw us a like on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts.